this is part of a broad pattern of Trump administration and campaign people lying about their contacts with the Russians. So that in itself is very substantial and serious, and obviously when it's the National Security Advisor of the President, all the more troubling. But given the universe of potential charges against Mike Flynn, it also indicates he must be providing substantial cooperation to Bob Mueller.
We've got now 2 people pleading guilty. We've got a campaign manager and his deputy still under indictment. How many more figures have to be brought to justice because of their ties with Russia before we end up connecting all these dots?
Well, our correspondent Laura Bicker has more on the significance of the Flynn deal.
The charge is that during that transition period, while President Obama was still in office, that he spoke to the Russian ambassador, Sergei Kislyak, about Russian sanctions imposed on Moscow for, at the time, when intelligence communities came up with the findings, they said that Russia had interfered in the presidential election and President Obama had reacted by slapping on those sanctions. The conversation that Michael Flynn was told to have with Sergei Kislyak at the time was, do not react to those sanctions, and Russia did not. Now, the problem for the White House is who directed him to have those conversations. But there were other conversations he also had with the Russian ambassador about UN votes, for instance. And with regards to that conversation, it seems that Jared Kushner is being reported as the person who urged him to go to the Russian ambassador to talk about a UN vote on Israel. So when it comes to various conversations he had, there are various members of the Trump transition team who have urged him to do so. According to US media, that's what Michael Flynn will testify. And that's one of the reasons why this is so significant. He is the closest member of Donald Trump's campaign team and Donald Trump's administration to be caught up in this investigation.
Laura Bicker there. Well, if you want to know more about what might be next for the Trump-Russia investigation, just go to our website. There's analysis from our senior North America reporter, Anthony Zerker. Just go to bbc.com/news. Let's take a look at some of the other stories making the news now. Violent protests across Honduras have intensified, with 1 person dead and at least 20 injured. A partial recount of Sunday's election is taking place and final results are expected shortly. The opposition candidate, Salvador Nasrallah, has accused the Electoral Court of manipulating the vote counting system. Dutch prosecutors said Slobodan Praljak, the former Bosnian Croat military leader who poisoned himself in the dock at the UN's Yugoslav War Crimes Tribunal on Wednesday, died of potassium cyanide poisoning. The tribunal has begun an internal investigation that will focus on how Mr. Praljak got hold of poison. White House officials have indicated that President Trump is likely to announce next week that the US is to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Critics have warned that the decision could jeopardize peace negotiations because the status of Jerusalem is likely to be part of any final agreement. Police in Germany are examining an improvised explosive device which has led to the evacuation of a Christmas market in Potsdam near Berlin. Police say they found a suspicious powder inside a metal cylinder packed with nails, although they believe the device may not have been viable. Now, millions of people download antivirus software onto their computers every year to protect themselves from hackers and cybercrime. But now the government is warning that using Russian software could be a risk to national security. One of the most popular antivirus products is made by a Russian company, Kaspersky. But the company's boss has told the BBC there is no evidence they're involved in spying. Here's our security correspondent, Gordon Carrera.
Fears of Russian cyber espionage have been growing, and tonight the government issues a new warning about the risks posed by Russian companies, such as Kaspersky Lab.
Our mission has always been to protect the big and the small.
Kaspersky Lab provides security products designed to protect systems from criminals and hackers. It's used by consumers and also businesses and some parts of government.
We keep the secrets of global significance.
For a system like Kaspersky to work, this software requires access to almost all the files on someone's computer, phone or network to scan for viruses.
And the software may also need to communicate back to the company's headquarters in Moscow. The fear is that this could be used by the Russian state for espionage, stealing secrets.
Here at Britain's National Cyber Security Centre, they say they've not seen actual proof of such espionage, but they believe there is an increased risk. And so today they've told government departments not to use Kaspersky for systems containing sensitive data.
This is specifically about entities that may be of interest to the Russian government. And so that, for us, is about national security systems in government, of which there are a very small number. And, for example, if you have a business doing negotiations that the Russian government may be interested in.
Kaspersky Lab has already faced allegations that it's been used for espionage in America. Earlier this week, I spoke to the company's founder and chief executive at their London offices about those claims.
My response is that we don't do anything wrong, and we will never do that. It's simply not possible. And what's in all this publication, they are just speculating about some rumors, opinions, and there is a zero of the hard data.
400 million people use Kaspersky products around the world.
But Barclays actually offers Kaspersky's.
In the UK, Barclays has provided it to customers, but officials say they're not telling the general public to stop using it. Kaspersky Lab denies any wrongdoing, but today's warning is another sign of growing fears over the risks posed by Russia. Gordon Carrera, BBC News.
Now, Pope Francis, who's visiting Bangladesh, has met a group of Muslim refugees and used the term Rohingya for the first time during his trip to the region. He refrained from using the word while he was in neighbouring Myanmar, which doesn't recognise the Rohingya as an ethnic group. More than 600,000 have fled over the border to Bangladesh to escape violence, with many being held in a camp in Cox's Bazar. Our religious affairs correspondent Martin Bashir reports from Dhaka.
On the fifth day of his visit to South Asia, Pope Francis arrived in typically unpretentious style at an interfaith gathering in Dhaka. In the audience were 16 Rohingya adults and children who'd fled from Myanmar. One of them was 12-year-old Shaukat Arar. Shaukat's entire family lived in a village in Rakhine State when the army arrived in September. In recalling what happened, she said, "They shouted, 'You Rohingyas, you Bengalis,' and then killed everyone. They killed my aunt, my uncle and others in the village." "They killed my whole family. My 4 brothers, my sister and my parents are dead. I have no one left." The Pope invited the refugees onto the stage and blessed all of them, including Shaukat. And having not used the word once during his visit, he decided to give a name to the people and their suffering. The presence of God today, he said, is also called Rohingya. A papal visit brought global attention to the suffering and comfort to a child who's lost everything. Martin Bashir, BBC News, Bangladesh.
Well, stay with us on BBC News. Still to come, hundreds turn out to see Prince Harry and Meghan Markle on their first public engagement.
This team of women in London has been given just a week to find innovative ways to prevent sexual harassment on public transport as part of the BBC's 100 Women Challenge. Can they do it? Find out here on BBC World News.
Join us live from Hull, Britain's City of Culture, as we reveal the winner of the most prestigious prize in British art, the 2017 Turner Prize, on BBC World News.
some say it's going to be the most expensive lunch in history. The British Prime Minister Theresa May here on Monday sitting down with Jean-Claude Juncker to try to agree the outlines of Britain's deal to exit the EU. Can she do it? And how much will it cost? For the latest, follow us on BBC World News.
This is BBC News, our main headline. President Trump's former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn has pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI over his contact with Moscow. The British Prime Minister's deputy, Damien Green, is under renewed pressure after claims that he accessed pornography on his parliamentary computer. A retired detective said he found thousands of pornographic images on a computer in Mr. Green's office 9 years ago, and that it was ridiculous to suggest that anyone else could be responsible. Mr. Green, the first Secretary of State, has again insisted that the allegations are false. Danny Shaw has this exclusive report.
He's Theresa May's oldest and most trusted political ally, now battling for cabinet survival over claims he watched pornography on his work computer.
Could I just ask you to leave? Is that possible?
The allegations, which he denies, centre on computers seized in this police raid over leaked documents from the Home Office. Now, a detective involved in the inquiry has given me his account of what he discovered.
I had an exemplary record.
Neil Lewis spent 25 years in the Metropolitan Police before retiring due to ill health. He has multiple sclerosis. In 2008, he was given the task of examining Damien Green's work computer.
The shocking thing was that as I was viewing, I noticed a lot of pornography thumbnails, which indicated web browsing. But a lot. There's a lot of them.
How many images did you see on that?
Thousands.
Thousands of pornographic images?
Thumbnail images.
This is the one notebook you kept?
Yes.
Neil Lewis still has his notebook from the time detailing what he saw on the computer. There's a reference to briefing officers about pornography. He claimed 2 other detectives also saw the material. It was legal and not extreme, he said. Similar images were also seen on a laptop, he claimed.
How can you be sure that it was Damien Green who was accessing that pornography?
There's a sort of phrase, you can't put fingers on a keyboard. So I can't say that, but the computer was in Mr. Green's office, on his desk, logged in, you know, it's his account, his name, in between browsing pornography. He was sending emails from his account, his personal account, reading documents, writing documents, and it was just impossible. It was sort of exclusive and extensive that, you know, it was ridiculous to suggest that anybody else could have done it.
Outside his home in Kent today, Damien Green protested his innocence. A Cabinet Office inquiry has been examining his conduct.
Mr. Green, could you...
Okay. I've said that I'm not commenting any further while the investigation is going on. I've maintained all along, I still maintain it is the truth, that I didn't download or look at pornography on my computer, but obviously while the investigation's going on, I can't say any more at the moment.
One of Mr. Green's colleagues in Parliament rallied to his defence, saying the detective's account didn't add up.
The pattern of behaviour he describes is, it seems to me, entirely inconsistent with the normal pattern of behaviour of an MP in Parliament. We simply do not have hours to sit in front of our computers and browse leisure websites of whatever variety.
Did you look at pornography at all?
There are now questions about how apparently confidential information about Damien Green's computers was made public. Scotland Yard is looking into it. Danny Shaw, BBC News.
The European Council President Donald Tusk has warned the British government that the EU will not begin discussing trade in the Brexit talks until Ireland is happy with the UK's offer on the future of the Irish border. It comes as the head of the World Trade Organisation has told the BBC that the UK faces a very bumpy and long road to secure a trade deal. Our economics editor Kamal Ahmed reports.
On the banks of Lake Geneva, the organisation that holds the rulebook for trade around the world and is helping both sides, Britain and the EU, as they tread their way gingerly towards separation. The man in charge told me that a hard and disruptive Brexit would carry costs.
I don't think this is going to be an easy negotiation, to be frank with you. I think it's going to be very tough because of the number of elements and variables involved in this conversation. Trade negotiations are extremely complex. They are very sensitive politically.
People have talked about what has been described as a hard Brexit. Would that be a disaster for the British and European Union economies?
Clearly, this is not going to be a situation where all trade stops. There is collapse in terms of the economy as a whole. So that, for me, is the end of the world. But it's not going to be a walk in the park. It's not like nothing happened. There will be an impact. The tendency is that prices will go up, of course. You have to absorb the cost of that disruption.
That question of disruption affects so much in these negotiations. What about the Irish border and how to keep it open once Brexit happens? In Dublin, the EU offered the Irish Prime Minister what amounted to a veto.
If the UK offer is unacceptable for Ireland, it will also be unacceptable for the EU. This is why the key to the UK's future lies, in some ways, in Dublin.
Is there any example we can look to which could solve this Irish problem?
I can't think of a close parallel anywhere else. It's challenging, I have to tell you, to the extent that there is no longer a customs union. It's no easy solution comes to the mind.
Here in Geneva, and a warning. No free trade deal with the European Union would be costly for the UK. Next week, the focus moves 500 miles north to Brussels,
where a lunch, maybe frosty, between Theresa May and the President of the European Commission will try and unravel some of these difficult issues. Kamal Ahmed, BBC News, Geneva.
Now, the draw for the 32 teams who've made it to the 2018 Football World Cup has taken place in a ceremony at the Kremlin. Our sports news correspondent Richard Conway, who is in Moscow, cast his eye over the draw.
The draw has been made here at the Kremlin State Palace in the heart of the Kremlin compound. Vladimir Putin, Russia's president, welcoming all 32 teams to come in and to take a look forward to next summer's tournament. But Russia itself will kick off the entire competition on June 14th next year against Saudi Arabia. That will be here in Moscow at the Luzhniki Stadium. I've been given by FIFA my little wall chart already, so I have the map all laid out of who will play where and where they will be taking place. So some very interesting matches as well. Portugal taking on Spain, those neighbours clashing once again. That will be a fascinating tie. Argentina as well in Group D. They will have to take on Iceland, who are making their debut at the World Cup. And England, of course, who will be wanting to overturn a frankly terrible record in recent years at the World Cup. They will take on Belgium, Tunisia and Panama. So some interesting games there as well. Belgium, of course, having a very heavy English Premier League contingent in their ranks. Roberto Martinez as well, their manager. He knows all about managing the top English side. So that's another one to look out for.
Richard Conway there. Now, Prince Harry and his fiancée Meghan Markle have carried out their first official public engagement since they announced they were getting married earlier this week. They were greeted by crowds of well-wishers as they visited a World AIDS Day charity fair. Here's our royal correspondent, Nicholas Witchell.
As an actress, she's been used to a public stage. She's accustomed to meeting crowds and dealing with fans. Little surprise then that Meghan Markle handled her first official public appearance in her new role with considerable confidence. Husband-to-be was on hand, solicitous and supportive. There was a lot of eye contact between them and supportive arms going around each other's backs. At times they met the crowds together, but then Meghan branched off on her own, stopping and taking time with people. While Harry did the same thing on his side of the street. Moments later, they were reunited, the cue for more back-rubbing. This clearly is a team effort, and the new recruit seems a natural.
She will do hundreds and hundreds of events like this in the years to come, but she will remember this one, her first official encounter with the British public.
And the verdict on her performance?
I think she's great. Good addition to the royal family.
Definitely.
Yes.
Like an American.
Go mixed kids.
Yeah, mixed kids in the royal family now.
The couple heard about the work of the Terence Higgins Trust, the charity which has worked for years to help people suffering from HIV/AIDS. It's a cause Harry, now with Meghan, wants to take forward in tribute to his late mother. And at a local college, they heard about the efforts to help young people keep out of trouble. Serious issues to which Harry, through a charitable trust, is devoting serious attention. But for all that, there was no doubt who sparkled the most today, the woman with the diamond.
I saw her ring and the diamond is massive. It's absolutely gorgeous. Just knowing that you're sitting near Meghan and Prince Harry, it's jaw-dropping. It's really nice.
A glittering future then? It certainly seems to augur well. Nicholas Witchell, BBC News, Nottingham.
Well, for the first time since the end of the Cold War, the US state of Hawaii has tested a siren warning of nuclear attack. Resumption of a monthly statewide test was prompted by North Korea's firing of a powerful intercontinental ballistic missile earlier this week. Must have been worrying for the people there. We can get in touch with me on Twitter. I'm at BBC Regid Ahmed. Much more on the website.
Hello there. With low pressure in the Mediterranean,